we're going to be installing a pilot bearing. And if you notice, I've already got the pilot bearing pressed in 90% of the way using a rubber mallet. Some use harmonic balancer pulley tools. Some use mallets. It's whatever method you prefer. I actually just prefer doing this very softly, taking my time, because there's not a lot of force really to press this bearing in. The main thing that you want to focus on is, even when you're using a balancer install tool, is to not use the all thread where there's a pointy tip, which essentially will distribute the load on the center of this bearing. Right on the center portion of this bearing, has ball bearings residing around the outer radius of that center bearing. And if you push or distribute the load essentially on the center portion of this pilot bearing, you're going to be pressing against just that center bearing and forcing those ball bearings out of their initial position. The outer portion is going to want to stay where it's at, and the inside is going to want to be pressed in, because this is a sort of a rubber composite material. It's wrapped around this inner portion, in between the inner and the outer portion of that pilot bearing, inner and outer hub. So what I like to do is find a socket which is exactly or just a hair smaller than the ID or OD, the ID of the outer hub, or the OD of the pilot bearing. And what that does is that allows me, just enough room to hit on the outer metal portion of the pilot bearing and not damage or cause any kind of load distribution problems by pressing in on that center portion. That's a big no-no. You do not want to hit anywhere on the middle or center section of this pilot bearing. It's a short video. It's not complicated, just a simple tip of an easy way to install a pilot bearing. There are ways to hold this in place. You can take, sort of a socket extension and press it through like that. If you had a shorter one, you just kind of help you hold it in place. There are many ways to make this a little easier, but I am going to use my hand and just a small few taps on here to ensure that it's seated firmly. And you'll hear it. When it bottoms out, you'll actually hear it, and you'll feel it with your mallet. And it doesn't go far inside this hub assembly, just a fraction in there. So I'm going to take one more tap here just to make sure. And you can tell that is absolutely now seated perfectly, firmly within that hub assembly, right on the rear crankshaft here, where the throwout bearing for my M7, this is a manual vehicle, will press. So now I'm not concerned about damage by pushing an initial load on the center part of that pilot bearing. I know that I pressed it in using the outer assembly of that pilot bearing, and that ensures a nice clean install of your pilot bearing, no problems. I feel comfortable, because any damage to this pilot bearing, you have to pull the motor or pull the trans back out of the car, which is a big, nobody wants to do that. So take your time, don't rush this, do it right, and you won't have any problems down the line. All right, next I will be installing the clutch assembly, which is the last step in my engine process. There's a few little starter, covers on the side and bell housing cover I may install, and then my engine will be complete, and engine will be going in tomorrow. So Again, subscribe, and you will see a lot more coming. Thank you.